Testing. Hey, there it goes. Hey, everybody. Welcome. My name is Chris Deville. I'm going to be your interviewer today. I'm the managing editor of Stereogum and the author of the upcoming book, Such Great Heights, The Complete Cultural History of the Indie Rock Explosion. Today's event is brought to you by the Ohio University Music Industry Summit and Ohio Live. So we're going to just get right into it. Our guests today are one of the great American rock bands. These guys are true originals who are tapped into the classics. They are Louisville, Kentucky's own My Morning Jacket. Yeah. Feel like I'm on The Price is Right. Come on down. All right, so welcome, guys. I wanted to start out by talking about you have a new album out, less than a month old, called Is. And I want to start just generally, did you guys have any guideposts or goals, vision board for what you were going for with this one?
Slowly, I began to realize that all of my guideposts and vision boards are completely irrelevant because I always find that the universe ends up making the record at the end of the day. And it always does, but sometimes I think I've got an idea about this or that, and but then the universe always shows you at the end of the project what's going to work. And we did several sessions before we did what ended up to be this record, and I had all these ideas and stuff. I was like, let's make it, it'll be 4 songs, and all the songs will be 10 minutes long, it's gonna be sick. And none of those songs worked, and the universe is like, nope, it's not that one. And then we finally just threw out every idea of any plan and just let the universe shape the record. And it really was fun doing it with Brendan O'Brien, because I feel like Brendan O'Brien is a really great vehicle for the universe, because he's just concerned with the music. He's not concerned with his ego or the legend of Brendan O'Brien. He's concerned with what the universe is trying to get through in the music, And so I feel like he really inspired us to just let go of everything and just try your hardest, play your hardest each day, knowing that what you're working on, it might work and it might not. It's kind of out of your hands.
Now, since you bring up Brendan, Jim, I know usually you have been the producer or the co-producer on a My Morning Jacket album, and this time you did work with Brendan O'Brien, who, if anybody doesn't know, he's kind of like a total pros pro, has produced everybody. He's probably best known for Pearl Jam, but he's done Rage Against the Machine, The Killers, Bruce Springsteen, AC/DC, Mastodon, the list goes on and on. So I've read that there were, maybe some self-care issues related to kind of taking your hand off the wheel and letting somebody else do it. Can you elaborate on that, and also on how you landed on Brendan as your guy?
Yeah, I struggled for years with depression and self-loathing and alcoholism, and my entire self-worth was based on all of these external sources and how well the band did or how well my career did, or and all these things. And in the pandemic, I found a really great therapist, and I started doing EMDR therapy and parts work therapy, and just trying to love myself, trying to find a way to love myself that nobody could take away from me. And I've been cultivating that. I mean, that's a lifelong thing. I'm still working on it, but I've built this love that's been really beautiful, where I can just try to love Jim no matter what external things happen. And I think once I began to realize a lot of that stuff, I began to realize how desperately I was clinging on to this story of Jim succeeding in the world. And in order for the success to mean anything, Jim had to do everything. Jim had to produce the record, play the record, write the record, do this, blah, blah, and decide what microphones are on the record, blah, blah, blah. And I don't have any regrets about it because I'm proud of everything that we've ever done and everything that I've ever done. But I think the more that I learned how to love myself, the more I could kind of let go. And we were at a point where we had over 100 demos, and we had already done 2 sessions for this album. And we had some cool stuff, but it just wasn't coming together, and we weren't really quite sure where to go. And so the idea came up of trying to work with somebody, a producer or whatever. But a lot of times producers bring in giant ego with their thing. And so then you have to sit around listening to legendary tales of yesteryear, how many Grammys they've won and how many times they've worked with Elton John and all this stuff, And I took a meeting with Brendan, and at first I didn't really vibe with him because I was like wanting to vibe out or whatever, and I was like, what? And he's like, you got any songs to play me? And I was like, I'm not really ready to play any songs. He's like, oh, well, let me know if you want to play me some songs sometime. It was like all he was interested in was the songs, and like maybe 6 months later, when I was ready to play songs, I took another meeting with him. And that's when he really blew my mind because he just like immediately dug into the songs. And immediately he's like, oh, this song, I don't know why you'd want to work on that song. And then the next song he's like, now this song is really cool, but I could see, that I don't think the chorus is quite well. He like automatically had a lot to say, and it was really, I think I was able to let go as an experiment and look at him as a coach. And I think all the guys would agree. He is one of the greatest coaches. Yeah, he really coached us all in such a beautiful way that really just truly felt egoless the way he worked. It's like he's just there to serve the music.
Yeah, so it was definitely a different experience for you. What about the rest of you guys? Like, how was this album experience different under the changed circumstances?
I think it was more of the chase for the song versus the performance. We did a lot of work sifting through songs, like he was saying. I mean, you came with like 700 voice demos or something like that, and then you whittled it down to what? I mean, when we started playing in the basement, it was like 175 songs. So we would start just sifting through, and like whatever proved itself to work, we'd focus on that, and we just kind of like you go through your attic, and you're like, okay, I need this, I don't need that, and we whittled that down to maybe 75 songs, which is a ton of songs for anybody to do, and that's kind of when we all started working on stuff, and then Brendan came through and he picked his version, and it was all just kind of based on what songs wanted to be part of the album, and even when we got into the studio, it was about trimming the fat from the song. Like, we have a tendency, I mean, you all have heard the albums, there's rarely a song shorter than 5 or 6 minutes long. Those are usually the shorter songs. And this time Brendan was really great about going in and like trimming the fat and like getting to what the song was about. And that's a big difference for us. And then when we went to record it, it wasn't about going in and getting like a take. We would go in and if there was a section of a song, we were like, great, that's that section. And we would just move forward, and it was whatever the song needed. We just kind of like got out of the way of the song, and it told us what it needed, kind of like what Jim was saying in terms of like the universe dictating the outcome of that stuff. We got out of the way of it and kind of like let the song be itself. But about Brendan, super fast, Brendan really utilized all 5 of us in ways that I don't think any other producer has before, and in a way that a coach does. A coach looks at the team and says, okay, you're the point guard, you're the forward. Like, he looked at everybody and gave everybody a moment to shine, and he was really like complimentary whenever somebody did something well. So you would leave there thinking like, oh, all right, well, I did okay. The studio can be like a really like vulnerable, like painful place at times, and he brought out the best in everybody.
Yeah, one of the biggest differences between this record and the last like 4 or 5 we did is that we didn't rehearse for the last 4 or 5 records we made. We would just go into the studio with demos, and Jim always wanted to just capture kind of beginner's mind magic, and so he didn't want to like overthink the songs and arrange them and play them and create demos before we go into the studio, because we were always trying to capture like first take magic and just kind of see like where our beginner's mind was. And so I think it was Z was the last time we actually even like played songs before we went into the studio. So this time we played a lot of songs together, and they did like sessions as bass, drums, and vocals, and then Carl and I kind of did some sessions with Jim, and then we did pre-production sessions at Jim's house without Brendan, and then Brendan came in and he kind of chose the song. So that was kind of the difference, a big difference.
That's cool. So, Jim, you guys have mentioned just the sheer number of songs that were circulating. I was going to ask, what were you thinking about as a songwriter this time around? And do you think that there are like defining themes of the album or this body of work? Maybe when the number of songs goes into the 3 digits, it's not possible to, find a through line like that. But did you feel like there was like a certain, point of view or certain ideas that you were trying to get at?
Not really. I feel like there were so many ideas that, because I put everything into the pot. Normally I've got like songs that are going to be solo record songs, or songs that are going to be My Morning Jacket songs, or this or that. And I just put them all into the pot. So they were ranging from even old things from around Z era, like Half a Lifetime that I had forgotten about. Like I threw that in the pot. I threw like new solo songs I've been working on. Everything was in the pot. And I just looked at it as an experiment to completely let go and just follow Brendan into battle. Like, what is this guy like? Because what he had to say to me about the songs was so intelligent and so beautiful and so heartfelt that I was like, and I think I told the guys this, I was like, let's just go down this road. And if it sucks, if we're on the wrong road, then we'll leave and we'll go down another road or whatever. But this is kind of the point of this whole experiment, is to go down this road. And so I tried to just completely let go. And I found that if I could let go of anything I was grasping to, that I just would show up and work as hard as I could that day, on whatever song we're working on, and try to let go of any vision of what the album might be or not be, or what I was trying to say or not say, or whatever. I was just trying to kept letting go of what I wanted, and knowing that that the universe would ultimately guide it.
Yeah, I think there's 3 things that popped to mind when I think about working with Brendan. The first one is when we hung out with him backstage one time, he was like, "I don't care about your band dynamic. I don't care about the emotions or the relationships or anything." He said, "I don't care." And so he really was a dispassionate observer. And when you have this much music and this many ideas, you kind of need that at that point. And then the other thing, we were at Jim's basement, and Brendan was like, "I don't care whose idea it is, if it's the right idea, that's what we're doing." And that was also amazing. And that allowed everyone to kind of contribute without fear. And then the third thing was the momentum. Like, when we're in the studio, we never got stuck on something. We were always moving forward. And he, I was asking him, like, "That's really cool. We've usually spent like 2 or 3 days on a song." And he's like, "Man, if we just keep moving, and if we get a whole song done today and we didn't get it, we'll just do another day and we'll get it then." And I was like, that's all so simple, but after 20 years, that was so nice to have.
Yeah, because I was trying to be all of the roles. Like our last record before this, I was trying to be the coach and the Pro Tools operator and the engineer and the songwriter and the singer and the guitar. My laptop is open. I've got like Pro Tools open. I've got my lyrics open. I'm like trying to like finish the song. I'm like, "Oh shit,
like, why am I so
drum's not
tired?"
working or whatever. Yeah, it's just like so insane. I feel like it kind of goes back to the self-care thing, because I feel like if we don't address our own self-care and our own self-love and our own self-worth, we're operating from a place of fear and control, this need to control, this fear-based way of living. And I feel like there's this myth that to love yourself or to take care of yourself is like selfish or whatever, you know. And obviously we can be selfish too, but I do think we're all missing the boat on this like thing where it's like we're so concerned about what's going on in the outside world, but we're like missing the very core thing of what's happening in our own heart. Like, are we being true to our own self? Do we love our own self? And if we can get in touch with that, then I feel like then you can really operate from a more clear place, you know, and that felt so good to see that on this record where it's like I was showing up each day and I'm like, my job today is to do one thing or two things, you know, to sing and play guitar. I'm not running the fucking computer. I'm not like looking at microphones. I'm not, you know, it's like I'm not trying to coach everybody at the same time. It was really beautiful.
That's cool. I was going to say, it feels like this album has a really kind of optimistic energy to it. And, you know, even more so, you know, you had the single Aren't We One last fall. Is that hard to do when at a time when, you know, the world can feel so dark and combative? Or, you know, is that why you're doing it? Like, you know, is it an intentional effort to put kind of positive energy out there?
Yeah, we definitely try to put positive energy out there. You know, it's hard sometimes, but we want to be a place that's healing and safe, you know, and I think that's the thing too with the self-love and the compassion or whatever, like looking at everybody and realizing we're all the same. We're all part of the same energy that is behind everything, that people try to label it as things, as, you know, different labels and stuff, but we're all part of the same thing. And I think everybody's so busy fighting each other and caught up in the divide and conquer mentality that works so well on people of the right and the left and the liberals and the conservatives. And it's like, that's all a bunch of bullshit, you know, because we're all, at the end of the day, we can all meet in this place where we can all figure it out, you know, but we all got to let go of all these identities that we're clinging to, and we got to let go of all of this hatred. It's like classic Star Wars shit, you know, that we're all missing. You know, it's like, you know, like when Luke is wanting to kill Darth Vader and the Emperor's like, yes, kill him. Your anger makes me stronger. Kill him, you know? And that's what everybody's doing. Everybody's online. They're like, oh, I hate this motherfucker. I hate this motherfucker. Blah, 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 blah. And all the hatred's like going. And I think when you start to look at yourself and like, how can I be fighting with somebody online if I don't even know myself? If I don't even know my own heart? You know, it's like, and then you can start to see that the other person that you think you hate so much is a being with a heart and a soul too. And you start to look behind their wall and like, why are they behaving this way? Because they're injured children that never address their real problems. You know, they've never gotten real with themselves, and so they're taking it out on everybody. They're taking it out on the rest of the world and trying to think they can fill this hole in their heart with all of this power and control and money, and it's just insane, you know. But rather than hating and directing more anger at those people, I feel like we need to direct love to ourselves and get real with ourselves and see them, you know, not condone actions that you don't believe in, but just like see people as beings that are just injured and they haven't gotten real. And I feel like if we can all start to do that, we can start to move the world towards a place of unity and acceptance, and just like agreeing to disagree sometimes. Like that's like a beautiful art of just like, hey, yeah, we don't agree on everything, but I respect you as a person, and let's just agree to disagree and live in peace.
So we are here in Athens, Ohio, at Ohio University, and that has a connection to your band, which is that Bo went to school here, although it's not mentioned on your Wikipedia page. So if there's any you know, Wikimedians out there who can, you know, update the document, we would appreciate it.
That's a worthwhile campaign. We need some grassroots movement on that, folks. I'm serious.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, you know, when were you living here? How did you end up here? And, you know, what did this place contribute to your development as a musician, as a person?
Yeah, I went to Berklee School of Music out of high school, and I went there for a semester, and I felt overwhelmed. Everybody was so good, and everybody practiced all day long, and I was like, I had anxiety. I was like having panic attacks, and so like I dropped out. I remember I called my mom and dad. I was like, I want to come home. My dad like drove the next day and picked me up, and a couple of my friends were coming to OU or going to OU, and I was like, I'll just apply there and see if I get in for the winter semester or whatever, and I got in, and my freshman year, I met Josh Antonuccio up there, who's the reason why we're here today. And we ended up playing in a band together. And I see Karen too. Karen was there. But anyway, I got a political science degree and like a minor in economics, and I just kind of did the thing that my mom wanted me to do, which is get a degree and get an education. You know, she used to tell me I was CEO material. It's like, you're CEO material, you could be a doctor, you know. And but I always just had this calling to music for whatever reason. It was just in my heart. It's funny how these things work. It's almost like you don't have a choice. And the music was always calling to me, and I was telling the guys earlier today that I found a grand piano, and I think it's Schoner Hall, and I used to sneak in there and start playing the piano, and then I would sneak into the music building and play the piano, and then I found some other guys, and we started this band called Easy Steam Engine, which is funny. I didn't put the connection together literally until like 3 days ago. I was like, wait a minute. How is that? You know, like, because we have two songs, it's Steam Engine and Easy Morning Rebel. But anyway, yeah, then I applied to like Cal Arts, and I was gonna go to music school and study with Charlie Hayden there, and I moved to LA from here. But it all kind of stemmed from meeting Josh and like finding the music building and playing that particular piano. And pianos are like people; they're all different. They feel different. They sound different, and like, if you're a piano player, you can kind of like connect to an instrument or you don't. And I do feel like there's these kind of like serendipitous moments in your life where you find the right thing at the right time. And it kind of like shows you like, this is your path. And I found that piano and I was obsessed with it. I would sneak in there like every day and play it, you know, and I kind of like rekindled my love for music, and it reminded me how important it was to me. So that's some of the story anyway.
That's awesome.
So wait, second grassroots campaign then? Okay, first one is getting Bo on the university Wikipedia page.
Yes.
2 is getting Bo that piano. We got to figure out how to get that done.
I'm gonna go later today and see if it's still there. Hopefully it is. Yeah.
Good luck with that. I was wondering also.
Fair.
If they'll let you in.
You son.
Damn.
No, that was an earnest good luck.
Good luck with that, man.
So can you kind of trace? I know you mentioned moving out to LA. Can you kind of trace your path from OU to MMJ?
Yeah, I mean, I had a family friend that lived out there, and my brother lived out there. And once I got out there, I realized I couldn't really afford to go to Cal Arts because I needed to get financial aid to do it. My parents were kind of tapped out, and they couldn't afford to put me through it. And I couldn't get financial aid in California because I already had a degree, basically. And so, like, I needed to do, like, a semester or 2 of undergrad because I had no music credits. And I couldn't afford it. So I just, like, was kind of stuck out there. And I got a job working in television. And I worked for that company for, like, 5 years, doing documentaries for, like, the History Channel and A&E biography and things like that. And which was a great job. It sent me all over the world. I mean, I went to Russia, I produced this documentary about Wake Island, which is a tiny island in the Pacific during World War II. And anyway, that whole time I kind of never gave up on my dream. It kind of always felt like there was like this kind of like destiny about it, you know, where I just like couldn't give up. I always had a piano. I'd live in these like shitty apartments in LA, and I'd always make sure I like would find a piano and get the piano movers to move it up like 80 flights of stairs or whatever. And I'd drive my neighbors crazy. I almost got kicked out of an apartment for playing the piano at like 3 a.m. all the time. And I would play gigs all over LA doing whatever, you know. I had like wedding gigs. I had like a regular gig in an Italian restaurant with this girl who used to be on General Hospital. Yeah. And just, yeah, like all these weird like Hollywood gigs. Yeah, like her name is Jamie Ray Newman, actually, and she actually won an Oscar for a short film she did with her husband like a few years ago. Yeah, which is funny. Yeah, and then eventually I met this guy through Jamie, actually, who was working on this team of piano players for Yamaha pianos. And it was a piano that played by itself. And the head of the team was this guy named Mike Garson. If any of you guys are David Bowie fans, he was the original keyboard player in David Bowie and the Spiders from Mars. And he had this team of guys making music for pianos. And so they hired me on as an editor, basically. And so I got this like brand new piano, stuck it in the middle of my tiny apartment and a computer in front of it. And I would like edit Mike's playing all day. And honestly, to this day, I still play things in the band that I like picked up from editing Mike's piano playing, you know? And anyway, that led to quitting my job and being able to like go for it as a musician. So I did that on the side, and I took every gig I could get. And eventually I was at a party with a bunch of friends. I had a friend group of like guys that were like 4 or 5 years older than me. And one of them was this guy named Jamie Soretta. And at the time he worked for a music label or a publishing. I can't remember what the original label was. But anyway, we were just like chatting. And I was never one to like schmooze. There are a lot of people moved to LA, and that's like every time you're at a party, everybody's kind of selling themselves to you. Like, I got this screenplay, and I don't know, you know. I remember it was like the first time I'd heard people say, I'm really good at what I do. You know, they were like very like, you know, there's like a salesman element of all these people going over there trying to make it. And like in Ohio, we're like humble. You know, you don't do that. You know, you let other people sing your praises. And so it was kind of a rare moment for me where I was like, hey man, I'd love to get into something or whatever. I was kind of picking his brain, and I didn't really think anything of it. And then like 3 or 4 months later, he left a message on my answering machine, and he said that he's like, hey, I think I found the perfect thing for you. It's this band called My Morning Jacket. I was like, God, I think I just heard them on the radio, like KCRW or something. And yeah, the rest was history. Wow. And it was funny because I had gotten a few gigs as a side guy. I played with this artist named Kenna, and I played with you remember him? And I did a tour with him and Fisher Spooner, and I was kind of like started getting like into that whole like network of sidemen. And there was one guy in LA who would like set up all the auditions, you know. And I always hated it because like he always talked about how you looked. You know, like, you gotta look like this. They're looking for somebody who looks like this. I was like, fuck, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't, like, it's just not the game I wanted to play, you know? It's just not what my vibe was. And so I remember talking to him how bummed I was about that whole thing. And I was like, man, I'd just love to find something that was like, you know, like my thing, like a creative thing, you know, where I could be a part of a thing versus like part of like this sideman culture or whatever. And he just like intuitively knew that we would like hit it off. And it's funny how those things happen. You know, we think about how our lives would be so different had that not happened. Had I not had that conversation with Jamie at that time, my whole life trajectory would be different. Anyway, that's the long story.
You'd be like in charge of the History Channel now.
I know, right?
Yeah, you CEO material, yeah. So My Morning Jacket has played all over the world in all kinds of different environments. How much of your band's history has run through like small college towns like this one? And, you know, how is the experience of playing in a place like this different from like Madison Square Garden or Bonnaroo or some theater in Europe? Like, or does the experience, is it mostly the same across the board? You know, once you get on stage, it's a My Morning Jacket show.
Tom's going to take this one.
I was going to say, Tom, I want you to, could you tell him about Grinnell College?
Yeah, we were on tour with Guided by Voices in 2002. It was Patrick's first tour.
Yep.
And Bob Pollard pulled his back out in, what? Name a town in Iowa. Iowa City.
Yeah,
that's a good one. And the next gig was at Grinnell College. Does that sound right?
University.
That's it.
Yeah. And so all of Guided by Voices rider was like 3 cases of light beer a bottle of sake, a bottle of tequila, at least 1 or 2 bottles of Jack Daniels. This is what they had every night, and we were playing like small clubs, and they would pretty much consume all of it on stage during their set. And so we showed up, and they're like, Bob pulled his back out. Do you guys still want to play the gig? We're like, yeah, of course. And they're like, well, here's their entire rider. And I remember they took us to Walmart, and we got to buy things to like throw out into the audience, and it was like inflatables that go in a pool. And anyway, so before the show started, I think we tore into the rider a little bit, and Jim lost his voice during the show. And I remember Danny, our old keyboard player, had like the bottle of tequila at his station, and at a certain point, like he just wasn't playing anymore. And my friend Chavez, who was one of the bookers for the show, he went to college there. He was playing the Rhodes with us, and Danny was up front, like singing, like doing like a falsetto, like metal voice. And John was playing guitar, and the students moved the stage, like that portion of the stage, into the middle of the audience. So it was a little bit different than playing like
MSG.
Madison Square Garden or any other venue. That was just the first thing that came to mind when I was like, is it really that different than playing any other show? Oh, yeah. No, it was.
I remember seeing John way across in the middle of the auditorium on his piece of stage, and there's like all these students are up there dancing with him, and he's singing. I forget what he was singing, but he had the microphone. And he was like just completely wasted singing some song. Like it was so funny.
It looked like High School the Musical or something like that. That's how I picture it. Just like him in the middle with like a dance number going on around him. So that's our collegiate circuit story.
Okay, well, we'll be interested to see how it plays out tonight.
Yeah, you all have a lot to live up
If
to.
there's anything like that going on. I want to take it back to the beginning and talk about Louisville in particular. There's kind of like this really potent sense of place in your music. Like, your records have this physical and almost geographical aura about them. Like, to put it another way, you guys sound like you come from somewhere. And I'd love to hear about where you come from. And, did Louisville shape the sound of the band from the very start?
I'll take this one. Oh, no, I'm from Cleveland, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, Louisville's a really, really strange place. It's a really beautiful place. It's often misunderstood, and it's always, people always think it is what it isn't. People from the South think it's the North. People from the North think it's the South. It's not Chicago. It's not Indianapolis. It's not, it's just this thing that's, and I've always felt that way. I've always felt misunderstood, and so we've always really vibed with that, and the nature in Louisville is really powerful. And we did our first 3 records out on the farm of my cousin John, who was the original guitar player for the band. His grandparents had a huge farm out in Shelbyville, and they had an old apartment above the garage where we would practice and record and stuff. And a lot of that you can hear in the records. You can hear the crickets chirping, and you can hear the grain silo, and you can hear the reverb of the garage, and yeah, it's really interesting. We always have felt really proud to be from Louisville, and it always gave us an identity that was unique, I feel like, because it's just such a special place. And as you tour, one of the things you realize is that every place is special. Like every town has its amazing restaurants, its amazing record stores, or its amazing parks and nature, and you kind of begin to realize how beautiful that is to kind of celebrate where you're from. And then there's those kind of launch pad places like LA or New York or whatever, where there's more industry happening or whatever, but I always felt really fortunate to be born in Louisville.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to make, is that, growing up in Louisville, there wasn't a whole lot for people who weren't 20. Like, there's just a lot of drinking that goes on in Louisville. It's just like what you do. The bars stay open till 4. Bourbon is a major industry there. It's just like what people do. So, but to his point, like it's a city that didn't really have like its own identity, which is kind of like it's just Louisville. There's no like really pull to do anything. So it forces you to be really creative and kind of create your own world. And when I was younger, I really got frustrated with that a lot because I was bored, like senselessly bored. But so many bands came from that area because there was really nothing else to do. Like that's how you celebrated your friendships, was do something creative together, dream together, imagine together. And I don't know if the band would not sound like it does if it wasn't for just the lack of, pull in any kind of regional or like historical way. Like we were just kind of like left to our own devices. And that's so free. Like, again, it was really frustrating when I was younger. And when I look at it now as almost 47 years old, like it's so freeing. It was true freedom, true artistic freedom. And I guess that's what we sound like. It's what you all sounded like on those first two albums and what we all sound like now, because we don't have that pull. And it's the same for Carl from Indianapolis. It's the same Bo from Cleveland. Like we all kind of come from this same background of like, we don't have like this huge pull to be anything but ourselves. And that's just been a joy to have that freedom throughout the course of our lives and our career.
So related to that, when the band first started, it was, the first album came out in 1999, The Tennessee Fire. I'm curious about your sense of like kind of what American rock music was at that time, and if you guys fit into that, or if you were trying to not fit into any of that, and were there big bands at the time that you really admired and you were looking up to emulate, or were you just kind of on your own trip from the beginning?
Kind of both. I mean, we were trying to do something that was hopefully unique, but we were really inspired. I was super inspired by the Flaming Lips. When I was at that age, the Flaming Lips were kind of like the band that was really writing the rules at that time. And of course, like the Rolling Stones and Neil Young and stuff like that. That was really inspiring. But again, I like to think about the universe, because the universe kind of pushes us where we need to go. And like the way that I fell in love with reverb was accidental. Like I kind of just fell into it. And everywhere we went in the early days, the sound men would always tell me, you can't have that much reverb. You can't have that much reverb. You can't have that much reverb. And I was like, fuck you, man. Like, I'm going to have this much reverb. And it's like, that's I feel like those kind of things, the world shapes you, and you just kind of flow with it.
When the band started, were you recording first or playing out first? And relatedly, like obviously you have this reputation now as like one of the great live bands playing these marathon epic sets. Was that always kind of like something that you knew you wanted the band to be, or is that something that kind of evolved over time?
No, it's so hilarious, because I was in a band called Month of Sundays back in Louisville, and we were kind of heavy prog, kind of metal, like experimental kind of stuff. And I started writing songs that were quiet and gentle, and I don't know why, but I called them My Morning Jacket in my notebook. I was just like to remember them, and because I really started getting into Carole King Tapestry and Neil Young Harvest and Bread and this kind of 70s kind of soft rock stuff. And the guys in Month of Sundays hated that stuff. And we were playing all this crazy, like jarring kind of metal prog kind of stuff. So I started doing all of these kind of softer songs on my own. And that was My Morning Jacket at first. And then when my cousin John had that recording set up in Shelbyville, and he let me come record some stuff, and we kind of just fell right into it. And his band at the time that Tom was in was called Winter Death Club, and they were around all the time when John and I were recording, and they would kind of hear what we were doing, and they got interested, and they're like, oh man, if you need a bass player, you need a drummer. So we kind of, Winter Death Club kind of turned into My Morning Jacket, and then it was just so funny because it's like then we were making like these real reverbed out kind of folky things, and then we'd go play and we were like Metallica or whatever. We were just like playing like so heavy and like long hair and like all this like, and it's so then we kind of turned into like a rock and roll band, you know, and that was just so funny because I was trying to get away from like being in a rock and roll band, but it was like the universe.
That reminds me of Carl and I's first show. We played Work Play in Alabama, and you know we auditioned for the band and found out we were going to do the band. We flew out to Louisville, and then we drove out to the farm that Jim was describing at Johnny's house, and we rehearsed there for like maybe a couple of days. I think that was about it, and then we drove down for the first show, and like Carl and I had been practicing along with the records, you know, which because we didn't have YouTube back in the day, there were no like live recordings or whatever. And even during rehearsal, you guys were super tame. You had your hair up, and you were kind of just going through the motions to help Carl and I learn the song, but they weren't really giving much or whatever. And I'll never forget the first song. Like, it was like, holy shit, you know? Like, I forget what song it was. Do you remember what song it was?
I'd have to look. I don't know.
But I'll never forget Carl looking over at me, and he was just like wide-eyed, and I was like... It was like, and then like when the show was over, and I think we had like a few drinks before the show because we were like nervous. I have a photo of Tom and Patrick like holding like gin and tonics before the show or something, or bourbons, and like I'll just never forget that moment because I was like, holy, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
It was like,
and it was awesome.
Sitting on a surfboard in a calm ocean, and then a giant wave just goes. You're still on the ocean, you're still on the surfboard, but it's a different thing.
And then I remember you and I talking like over drinks that night and just being like, holy shit, like I'm fucking into this. Like this is awesome. You know, it was like we were so excited.
I mean, I had spent 10 years on my own playing clubs in a band that no one came to see. So like we're playing clubs that were kind of full and people were excited. Yeah. I was so in.
Yeah.
So,
So just before you guys joined the band, you know, there was a very famous, iconic example of that, you know, the kind of tidal wave of energy that you're describing. I'm talking about you have your famous Conan performance of One Big Holiday. You know, that kind of goes viral on social media every few months, it seems like. And it's, you know, just super rock and roll. And Jim, you're singing through your hair the whole time. What do you guys remember about that, and did you recognize that immediately as a huge turning point?
No, we always had this fatalistic approach that everything we did we thought it would be the last thing. We're like, oh, this is it. They're surely going to can us after this. But we made all of our records as long as a CD could be because we were like, this is going to be the last one for sure. And we like, so all of our first records are like 74 minutes long or whatever. Like just literally packed it. And I remember we did Conan, and we were just shocked that we even got to Conan or whatever. We were just like, wow, you know, and it was so over. You don't even remember, especially those first ones. They're like, ladies and gentlemen, my morning jacket, thank you. Ah, it's over that quick. It's like you didn't even play. And I remember driving back, because we were all in a van, and we were all crammed into one hotel room, and we watched it that night, and we were like, you know, just couldn't believe it. And I remember driving back in the van, and John and I were like, well, they could never take that from us. At least we had that. You know, like, I'm sure it's all over now, but at least we got to play Conan. Wow. You know, it's so funny.
I've always wondered what it's like to play a late night talk show and how hard it is to kind of ramp yourself up for that. Like, you know, you guys will gladly play for 3 or 4 hours, but that's a thing where, you know, you're playing for 4 minutes, and then you got to work yourself up for 4 minutes of action, and then it's just over. You know, is that difficult?
Yes, it's very difficult because the studios are often freezing cold for all the equipment, so you're like shoved into this freezing cold place, and it's terrifying. And that's when I think about the universe. Because it's really all out of your hands. Because sometimes it's amazing. You know, sometimes you play where you're like, you see it later and you're like, whoa, well, that was good. We did a good job. And then other times you see it and like, Jesus, man. Like, I wish we would have done this differently or whatever. But before it all, at least for me, it's like, it's always at a weird time when you're not ready to rock. It's like, I'm not ready to rock at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday morning or whatever. It's like, but here we go. And it's like, and you just kind of have to surrender, because it really is out of your hands how it's going to come out.
So that song "One Big Holiday" is on It Still Moves, of course, and that was your first album on ATO, your record label that you've been on ever since then. So, what was it at that time that made ATO seem like it was right for you guys, and why has it, I guess, continued to be right?
Well, they're just really, we signed to them and RCA at first because we wanted to have a major label distribution and an indie label aesthetic or whatever, and it was really great because once RCA got sold to Sony, BMG or whatever, and there's this weird point where we thought we might not be able to stay, like ATO brought us with them, and they've just been really great at just letting us do our thing. They never question us. They never second guess us, and they really are just so supportive, and it's just been a really wonderful home that kind of feels like us. It's like this really cool little place in the middle. It's not a giant label. It's not a small label. It's like they let us do what we want to do, and it's just been a really beautiful relationship.
That's cool. So I want to ask you about something completely different now, and that is the Muppets. At one point, there was supposed to be a tour where you guys were going to be, Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem, and I guess there was going to be sort of like a Gorillaz thing happening out in front. How did you guys get looped in with that project, and whatever happened with it?
There's this really nice guy. I wish I could remember his name. He worked for Disney, who had just bought the Muppets, and he wanted us to do this thing. And so we were talking to him, and we were dreaming big, and then he got fired, and then it all just went down the pipelines, I wish I could remember his name because he was very kind and really loved the band and really saw us being the voice of Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem, which was a huge honor. That was one of the coolest ideas I've ever heard. But yeah. Corporate structures are difficult to navigate.
We're still down, by the way. We're still waiting.
Yeah.
Oh, please. I'm down.
Grassroots campaign number 3.
Yeah.
I'm sure there have been, no shortage of changes in the executive boardroom of Disney since then. So maybe they've shuffled back to someone who's a big
He might be
Morning
back.
Jacket fan. Yeah,
Maybe
who knows?
he's back.
Bo, I cut you off. You're about to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say we recorded our recent record at where they kind of keep Henson Studios now. So it was kind of fun to kind of walk around and see that. It used to be Charlie Chaplin's studio, and then you guys probably know
It
the
was
history better than me.
A&M
But
Records. But there's
Yeah.
2 giant Kermit the Frogs that greet you every day, which is a fabulous way to start your day.
So next week, you guys are doing a big 5-night run back in Louisville, the Come Home Again shows. And so, if I understand right, those are going to be 5 completely unique sets. What's the process like for planning, 5 completely different shows?
Well, Bo's kind of led up the charge on that in recent times. We kind of
what you
just,
got?
Bo will kind of get it started. He'll kind of lay out a framework, and we'll all gather around and look at it and, debate this or that, and just try to make it an interesting journey. I don't know what you have to say about that, Bo.
yeah, I mean, we've done it a few times in the past. Like we did 5 nights at Terminal 5. What year was that? Like 2008, I think, or 10. And yeah, we're lucky to have enough material now to do it, with 10 records and multiple EPs. And then, sometimes we do Carl solo songs, we do a few Jim solo songs, you throw in covers and stuff like that. And it's gotten easier to do as time's gone on. But usually I start with like what we open and close with each night. That's how I start. I start with like, okay, well, Friday night, what do we want to open on? Like how do we want Saturday night to feel? Like, and then I go from there.
Do you try to have, like, for a residency like that, do you try to have a different feel for each night?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're trying to be cognizant of how the audience is going to feel on particular nights. Like if it's a Saturday night, we definitely want it to feel like more upbeat and more like a party or whatever than if it's like a Monday night or whatever. But yeah, they just kind of make themselves in a way. We just try to do creative things with them and try to do no repeats and try to tell a story with each set and make each show kind of like its own story.
And then try to remember everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Bo's not going to say this, but he has a beautiful gamer brain. He has like the strategic algorithm in his head that like word puzzles and chess and poker and all these strategic games. This is like his happy place. So when he applied that mindset to our catalog and started thinking about like how do we approach this, like it really when he started looking at set lists through that lens is when things really started getting interesting. And you doing work on yourself and letting songs out of the doghouse. The doghouse was a big move because there was so many songs for so long that you didn't want to sing, you didn't want to relive those feelings, which I mean I wouldn't want to read my high school poetry in front of a crowd of people. I don't know about you all, but all of the like so many things came into place to be able to where we are now in terms of touring and song structuring and set list making. But Bo is leading the charge on that with that beautiful gamer brain of his, and I just want a round of applause for that guy because he does a great job. And it's a really hard job.
It is. Jim does deserve a lot of credit because it is hard. It's hard to get up there. I mean, no, like
you just take a compliment, okay?
I just want to also give credit where it's due because, like, I don't think I always appreciated how hard it was to be a front man. Like you just get in the band, you're like, come on, we're playing the songs. That's a great song. Just play that song. But like, to like get up there and emote night after night and to really believe in what you're saying and the emotions that are behind the song, it's hard to like to do that night after night after night, And I think for a long time there were songs that Jim just didn't really feel connected to emotionally. And now I feel like he's gotten to this place where he can kind of like take on that character and feel those feelings, but also remain detached enough to like have it not be a painful experience for him. I mean, I think most of the time now. And I feel like that's really helped, you know what I mean? Because it's allowed us to kind of like play our entire catalog whenever. He hasn't really turned down a song that I've put on a set list in a couple of years. I mean, aside from maybe like, one or two, but everybody gets one or two. But yeah, it's been great. And the guys in the band are always down. Like I'll text them like the night before, I'll be like, do you guys want to learn this song? Do you have time to learn it? Sometimes when you're on the road, you're exhausted. The last thing you want to do is like sit down and learn a song like at 1 a.m. or like 10 a.m. when you get up, but they're always like down for it. So that's cool.
Well, I think one of the coolest things about playing 5 nights is that there will be nights where we'll end with a song that doesn't usually get put in that slot. And so it's kind of like, we'll see what happens. There's like a lot of chance involved. And then like sometimes a song gets new energy being placed in different spot in the set, So that's always interesting to me.
What about cover songs? Like how do you choose what you're going to cover? And how does the song kind of become like a staple, or maybe I can imagine how a song might pop into the set list and then immediately pop back out of the set list. But
I'll be right back.
He loves talking about cover songs.
Oh no!
We can probably handle this question.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just music fans, and so like
I disagree. It's not true.
we get obsessed with other artists or bands, and then if it's an easy song to play, then a lot of times we'll gravitate towards it. Sometimes just with the amount of work that goes into the tour, but yeah, sometimes they come in and out of favor. It's, you know, there's a little bit of, sometimes you're like, on New Year's Eve, it makes total sense to play a Kool and the Gang song. You know, why not? Let's play it. But like on a weeknight, like maybe not. You know, like so there's a time and a place for it, and it's always kind of up for discussion.
We've gone through so many eras where we're like, no more covers, you know, because we want like people to like us for our songs, you know. And then we get like, we'll get into this mode where we're like, we got to do this cover, and then we'll get all excited about a song, be like, yeah, we should do that, and then we're just like, no. And then we go back and forth so many times. I mean, we're still struggling with it to this day. We're like, should we play covers on this tour? And then like, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. It just kind of like, it kind of goes with how we feel. It's like
it's about curating moments, though. Yeah. Like I think earlier in the band's career, like we played a lot of covers because we didn't have as much material. So like we wanted to play longer, but we would have to start repeating songs again. And so we would throw covers into like, you know, be on stage longer and have more fun. And then that kind of turned into, you know, okay, we're going to do our first One Big Holiday. I think the first one we probably learned like 10 covers or something like that and spread it over 3 nights.
That's your festival.
That's right.
Destination festival in Mexico.
Well, it's been in Dominican Republic, and this one was the first. This past one was the first one in the United States because something happened at the resort where we couldn't play down there, and then a promoter in Florida quickly offered us a solution to do it here. But the point being is I think that our relationship with covers has changed a lot over the years because we do have so much material now that it takes the place of our own music. And so we toe this fine line of like, do we play other people's music or do we play our own? And what we found, and this has been super fun, is weaving them in and out of songs, almost quoting covers sometimes, like jazz musicians do that a lot. Like some of my favorite songs are like quotes here and there, and like, so we'll weave in and out of them, or we'll curate moments that we'll hear a song and it's like the perfect moment for this event. So it's not I feel like we've taken the pressure off of ourselves to learn a bunch of covers for an event, and it's more like how do they fold into what we're already doing.
Yeah, and then some covers kind of like fit the emotional, creative aesthetic of the band so well that they kind of just become part of our canon or whatever. You know, like songs like "It Makes No Difference" and "Rocket Man," and so like, you know, just the way that Jim sings "Rocket Man" feels like kind of definitive, like to our band. It feels like it's just like almost feels like one of our songs when we do it now.
Isn't that right, Jim?
Yeah.
Oh
no!
All right, I'm sorry. Okay.
You're fired, sir.
All right, thanks so much for having me.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to shift over to finish up here with we have some pre-screened fan submitted questions. We'll get through as many of them as we can in the last few minutes here. So the first one comes from Brittany Dunmeyer from Alliance, Ohio. She asks, are there any songs, individually or collectively, that stand out as your favorite piece of work? So there's an easy one.
Favorite piece of work?
I always like it when it feels like we're on a new path, you know, in the studio especially, where it's like, you know, you kind of go through your Rolodex. You're like, have we made a song that sounds like this or uses these chords or uses that feel? So whenever that happens, I get real excited about the song. But for me personally, there's not really like a specific one. It's always just like the future. Like this new record, there's a couple things I'm like, we've never done that before. I'm so stoked about that.
It's also kind of like picking a favorite child. You know,
Yeah.
It's like they all mean different things. You know, they're all little different moments in time. So they all kind of like bring out a different emotion in all of us. It's kind of tough to pick just one.
I will say I never get tired of One Big Holiday. Like this band's played almost 1,100 shows, and so I've probably played that song, 1,500 times or something insane. And at this point, it's like muscle memory playing the song. So it really allows me to just like focus on the crowd. Like I can just watch the crowd and take it in, and it's just like the sea of smiles, and that to me never gets old. So.
Yeah.
That's a good answer, Tom.
Thanks.
So the next one comes from Ben Fitchett from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who asks, what was the moment like when you each decided to commit to pursuing music on a professional level? So we heard from Bo on this.
No, for me, no, I'm just kidding.
I remember I was talking to Bo about this last night because we were reminiscing about college and stuff. I remember when I was probably 12 or 13, I was taking violin lessons and guitar lessons, and I remember looking in the mirror, and I was like, I got to make a choice. Between the violin and the guitar, this is huge. And my dad, who was a classical musician before he retired, obviously wanted me to continue with the violin, and he didn't quite understand rock and roll beyond where Elvis. Like he was like, as soon as Elvis happened, I'm done. That was his vibe. So anyway, so he was disappointed, but he supported me, even so, and helped me. And I think that's kind of when I made the decision, and went to music school at IU and studied audio engineering as well. I studied classical music at music school actually, because that's what I happened to do, which was not my job really, but yeah, that was, I think when I was 12 or 13, I made the call.
Anybody else?
I quit college after 2 semesters. I was a horrible student. I passed 4 classes, and I just realized it was like a waste of money, so I paid off, the 2 semesters, and became a baker at a bagel restaurant. And then I joined Winter Death Club. It was my buddy Pat. We were in a hardcore band together in high school. He was the bass player for Winter Death Club, and they were looking for a guitar player. And so that was the first time I met Jim's cousin John and Jeremy Roberts, who was the drummer for both My Morning Jacket and Winter Death Club. And so to me, I was like, oh, this is it. Like I finally made it. Like this band plays some shows outside of Louisville or whatever. And my mom always told me, if you want to go back to school, I'll pay for it. She was real sweet and real supportive, and and not like in a disparaging way. Just like, hey, if this doesn't work out, like, I'll help you get back into school and everything. And it worked out. So that was great.
My entire life, I've known that I wanted to be, or I couldn't articulate it when I was a kid, but being a musician is just something that I've always been. I never took a drum lesson or anything like that. I just kind of taught myself on the side of a bed with drumsticks. My grandmother was in a lounge act, so she would practice and I would go watch them, and like it just felt like I would just get this wash of emotion over me, and I didn't quite know like what it meant, or I just knew that I had to do it. And so like my brothers and I would at like 6 in the morning would like bring out my jam box and set it up in the driveway, and we would each take turns with like plastic guitars and drumsticks, and we would like play, like mimic along to our favorite albums. Well, my favorite albums. They were younger than me, and so like, I mean, we would pretend like the blades of grass were like heads in a crowd, and like jumping off of our bunk beds, like just mimicking videos that we saw. So like being in a band and being a musician was never like a choice for me. It's always just kind of been in the air and something that I had to do. But to answer the question, like professionally, honestly, like we grew up very similarly, very working class. Like my dad was a factory worker. He didn't graduate from college. My mom didn't graduate from college. So they were both like very much like, you've got to get a degree. You've got to take this seriously. And so honestly, like I never thought that music could be a profession for me. I never really considered it. It was just always going to be something that I did, but I would probably have to do something else for a living. So it really wasn't until I joined this band, really, that that I thought, like, okay, maybe I can do this for a living. Because, I mean, at the point in which I joined, still in a van, still playing 200-300-seater clubs, I dropped out of college as well. My parents were like, what the hell are you doing? But then I kind of explained to them what was going on, and I was going out with you, and you're like a son to them. So they kind of said the same thing that your mom said, like, well, if this doesn't work out, you have to promise you're going to go back to school. And so I made that promise. But this is kind of when, in 2002, is when I decided this could be a profession. And here we are talking about it in front of people. So it's so weird.
It worked out.
So crazy.
Yeah, there's never really any other option. The world always said no. I feel like everything I did, the world said no. And I felt like I didn't belong here in the world, but music was like the only yes that I got. And in the early days, the world said no to my music too. And I felt like there's just nowhere on this earth that I belonged other than in music. And I reluctantly graduated high school and reluctantly listened to my parents and went to college for 2 semesters like Tom. And school just always fucked with me. I just felt like they were trying to take all the magic from me. And I think I had a lot of bad teachers, because I know a lot of people have great school experiences or whatever, and I think it's all relative. But all I ever got from school was no about everything, until I had an art teacher senior year of high school. She was very encouraging, and she always said yes. She was like, yes. She encouraged my creativity. And after I went to University of Kentucky for those 2 semesters, I just kind of realized, and I think depression plays into a lot of this, and drinking and alcoholism and stuff, but I just was willing to die for it. I was just like, I'm going to do this if it kills me or not, because it's just like, I don't see any other way out of this insanity that is life. And it's like one of those things, the universe does what it does, and somehow here we are sitting here, and it's so surreal. But I think I do tell that to people who ask me, like, what should we do? We're trying to do a band or whatever. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be like too melodramatic about it, but you do have to be willing to die for it. You've got to be willing to go freeze to death on the floor of your van and to play your music for people and be penniless and work at, odd jobs and all that kind of stuff to do it. And if you're not willing to do that, then I don't, the world isn't going to have time to hear what you want to say, and there are exceptions to that, if you've got some serious medical condition, or if you've got kids to take care of, or what, there's legitimate reasons why people can't put it all on the line, or whatever. But it's like, if you're a person that's got no attachments and you're young and healthy and stuff, I feel like it's your duty to the universe to put it all on the line and go try and live your dream.
Got time for maybe 2 more of these. Lindsay Fulton from Columbus, Ohio asks, you've got these 2 bears, Pooch and Denise, that you bring on stage every show. Who bought them and who technically owns them? Like, do they belong? Do they belong to one of the members of the band?
Somebody want to see a fight.
They're free agents. They're free to come and go. They're not. Nobody owns them.
You know how bears are.
Yeah, they're on their own path.
We work for them.
Related question. Sophie Carter from Logan, Ohio asks, for each member of the band, what is your spirit animal?
I don't know. I don't know if we really think about that kind of thing. There's a book called The Medicine Cards that somebody told me to get a long time ago. That there's a Native American wisdom of animals. There's a book called Medicine Cards that I found this woman on the in New York back before the Mayan calendar was going to end the world. Remember that in 2012 when the world was going to end? And I met this woman on the street, and she was drawing these beautiful mandalas, and I bought a couple of them from her. And I was like, "What do you think about the world ending? You know, it's gonna end soon. I think it was gonna end tomorrow or whatever." And I was like, You think it's gonna end?" And she's like, "Oh, baby, the world's already ending. They just don't know it yet." she's like, "If you want to know what to do, you listen to the animals." She's like, "See that Barnes and Noble over there?" She's like, "There's a book called the Medicine Cards. You go in there and you buy that book. You take the cards, you throw them in the trash. You see an animal and it speaks to you, look it up in the book, and it'll tell you how to live your life. You can learn from the wisdom of the animals." And I went and got that book, and I've gotten, I don't know, probably 30 copies since, just to give them out or if I lose it or whatever. And that's very helpful. I like to recommend that to folks if you are looking for answers and you have an encounter with an animal or whatever, positive or negative, that it can, if you look up what it has to say, oftentimes it's really helpful.
All right, last question comes from Amber Neri from Charleston, West Virginia. It's kind of a double question, so a little bit cheating. What inspired the song Steam Engine? And also, can you talk about your American Dad episode experience?
Unrelated.
American Dad was so surreal because it was such an honor, you know, to like have them want to do that, but it was also terrifying because they were so brutal, you know. And I remember like we were like, before we saw the episode, I was just like, God, I hope they don't just fucking like destroy us or whatever, you know. But it was so beautiful, and Mike Barker, who was headed up that episode, you know, we were just so grateful to him for how much he believed in the band and how much he wanted to do that, and spearheaded the whole thing. And we went to the studio and read through a table read with them, and then we did all of our lines, and it was a real Hollywood moment. It was really funny. And then when the way it came out, we were all stoked. It's just like, wow, man. Like, you think that's how I put on my pants or whatever. That's pretty sick. You know, it's pretty awesome. So it was pretty beautiful.
You do have the voice of an angel.
I always really liked, I mean, finding out about a band or discovering a band, like, it makes me happy to think that maybe someone found out about us through that and thought, oh, they're like a fictional band, like Spinal Tap or something. And they're like, oh, wait, no, it's really a band. That's amazing. Like, I wouldn't want to stop that from happening.
On every YouTube comment I've ever seen on any My Morning Jacket videos, it's always like, American Dad brought me here, American Dad. So it lives on.
Cool. Well, before we close out, I just want to ask everybody remain seated while the band exits. They got to get over to the venue and sound check and all that. But thanks so much for being here, guys. Thanks for your candor.
Thanks, everybody.
And
thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
My Morning Jacket, everybody.